at the end of the day, what they want to do is they want to prevent people from knowing the weights because really the data is there to produce the correct weights.
Got it. So if they have the weights, they don't need the data.
Exactly.
Okay. That's important. That's an important component. Okay. Welcome to season 2 of Practical AI, everybody. My name is Jeff Northrup, and I'm with Peter Lynn here. Today's episode is brought to you by Pocket AI. Pocket AI is a tool you can use to perform surgery on your models to make them better. While everyone today is talking RAG and refinement, Pocket AI allows you to edit weights directly. Peter, it looks like OpenAI is going to go to war with open source. Tell us what happened recently with some of the OpenAI stuff that's kind of surfaced recently.
So there's been a few videos on YouTube about the proposal that Sam Altman is trying to get passed to the whole industry, which is he wants to encrypt what's happening inside the GPU so that you can't actually see what the model looks like. And that's really just to defend from anyone else knowing what the secret sauce is in their models.
Okay, so essentially when they upload or run a model on GPUs, it'll be encrypted so that some smart programmer or a machine learning engineer can't sort of decipher what's happening. Is that fair?
Yeah, so like today, for example, if you are writing a game, you load up your models and your textures and you say render it. And if it crashes, you can dump what's in the video card and look at it and go, okay, like why did it crash? So today you can't run OpenAI on your GPU because it's too wimpy and now it's, the model's huge. So right now it runs in the cloud. In the future, when it's small enough to run on your system, on your desktop, your Mac or whatever, a programmer will be able to actually load the model into memory and then dump it and then be able to see all the weights, which they don't want.
Okay. Now, for OpenAI, obviously their models have some significant amount of intellectual property baked into them. But isn't the biggest intellectual property reservoir their data?
Right. I mean, fundamentally, their transformer is still pretty much the same as what the original paper was from Google, right? So literally, it's still basically the same architecture. The secret sauce isn't in the transformers, it's in the data. And so that's the secret sauce.
And so that's what kind of makes Meta different from OpenAI, right? So explain like Meta's approach to data and OpenAI's approach to solving the data problem and proper data, good data.
Yeah, so with Llama 3, they made a huge improvement by generating synthetic data using a larger model and then using that to train the new version. Whereas OpenAI has a huge army of humans creating data for the alignment part of the whole training process. The first step is you just get the whole internet and you train it to recognize linguistic patterns, grammar, and so on, and remember some like basic facts. The next step is you then have to then refine the model so that it does something useful. And so it's that other data set that they've created that they consider their intellectual property because they pay for it. They created it, and that's what they use to align the model.
And that human interaction, what's that called again? What's the acronym for that?
RLHF, reinforcement learning through human feedback.
Okay. And Meta does that on a much smaller degree than OpenAI does because they're using synthetic data.
Well, so we don't really know, but they did say in their paper that they use synthetic data to improve it.
Okay.
So that's a mixture.
Okay, so let's get back then. So let's say there was no encryption with what OpenAI wants to do in the future. They don't do the encryption. A good engineer could kind of get into the nuts and bolts of the layers and the weights, the parameters, but does it help them at all with the data itself?
No, I mean, if you know the weights, so at the end of the day, what they want to do is they want to prevent people from knowing the weights because really the data is there to produce the correct weights.
Got it. So if they have the weights, they don't need the data.
Exactly.
Okay. That's important. That's an important component. Okay, so now let's take it a step further in this obvious sort of I don't want to call it an attack, but it's really opposing an open source sort of future, right?
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, open source is already catching up and will probably pass them. So they're trying to put up some defense right now to prevent other people from learning from their weights. But the reality is Meta has pretty much already caught up. Anthropic has caught up. And so their efforts to lock down the weights, it's not at this point, it's kind of futile, but I see why they're doing it.
Is it is there like a Defense Department type play here where we have to stay safe, can't let the Chinese get access or something like that, that is justifiable, or is this really petty?
I mean, there are always people that want to hoard knowledge or technology and keep it from everyone else. So that's always going to be there. But if we look at open source in the history of software in the 70s and 80s, like you had to buy software to use it. Like you couldn't, if you want to do a database that can handle your business, you went to Microsoft or Oracle or Sybase and you paid a lot of money. But today you don't have to. You can use open source databases. You used to have to pay for Windows or something else. And now Microsoft pretty much just gives away Windows.
Yeah.
And so because of Linux, because of open source, I mean, all these advances that we see today are the product of open source. And OpenAI would not exist without open source.
Well, wasn't it an open source project initially?
Well, it was the original code that Google released was open source. So they benefited directly from open sharing of knowledge through a paper and through the models up on GitHub. So I mean, it's kind of it's kind of cruddy. It's definitely not in the interest of saving the world. It's in the interest of OpenAI.
Yeah. Well, my only disappointment is that when you mentioned Sybase, you didn't also mention Terracotta and OS2. Okay, well, this is not a surprise, I guess, right? This At some point these castles are going to try to build higher walls because the barbarians are coming, right? The open source barbarians they're in the neighborhood.
Yeah, well, but we go back to that paper from that supposed paper from Google saying there we have no moat.
Yeah.
There is no moat because transformer model is still basically the same. What OpenAI is using is still basically the same. It hasn't really changed much. I mean, yeah, they've improved the code, so it's probably cleaner and better, but it's the same architecture. It's the data that's different.
Yeah. So it's essentially each of these firms is using the same sort of chassis, and
Yep.
it's just for them, it's a race to data or some sort of better data in order to get better generalization and
Yeah.
alignment.
Yeah. And it's expensive. So I get why they want to build up walls so they can put more money in to keep training the models. But at some point, it's like it just gets too expensive to keep training bigger and bigger models. It's like it's if it's really a trillion now, well, then supposedly in 2 years it'll be like 10 trillion. Well, how much is that going to cost?
Yeah. Well, good discussion. We'll put the link to that video in the discussion box, and as always, we'll try to keep more good topics coming. Like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll be here with more content. Thanks, everybody.